Today's creative professional is asked to be well-versed in a variety of mediums and platforms. So for that, you need to understand a diverse range of software. Today, I'm breaking down my Adobe toolset and how I use it for each individual platform and medium. So the first Adobe product I ever used was Photoshop. In, I think, 7th grade, I took my first web design class. And I quickly learned that I liked piecing things together visually in Photoshop way more than I liked coding things out. So, don't tell on me, internet, but I bootlegged my first copy of like Photoshop 6 or something like that on a CD, installed it on my mom's desktop computer, and that was really my first exposure to learning the Adobe toolset. So I'm now 10 years into my career, plus all that experience in high school. To me, Adobe is just secondhand knowledge, and it's easy for me to pick up other Adobe products because I'm familiar with the way the menu's organized, the way the toolset works, and I really like the way that the different pieces of software interact with each other. I'll go into that a little more later, but to give an example, I can illustrate something in Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, bring it into Adobe After Effects, animate it, and if I need to go back and make changes to the Illustrator file by saving it, I can always relink and adjust, and the software just works really well together. So I know there's lots of Adobe alternatives for creatives out there, but I'm an Adobe stan. I've used Adobe for so long, so today's video is focused mostly on Adobe. So my photo journey started as early as I did with Photoshop because I would take a regular digital camera and take photos and bring it into Photoshop to kind of learn and mess around with. But it really evolved after my second job when I was working as a multimedia designer for a small agency. A lot of times for the websites we built, instead of using stock, I would go take photos of their business, their customers, that kind of thing, and then use it in the websites we would build for them. So kind of the workflow for me with photography, and now I'm doing so much product photography for multiple different types of clients, but that workflow has evolved. And so I shoot with Canon cameras and I shoot in RAW, and I bring all those photos in and I use Adobe's Bridge product to quickly sort through and refine it and label things. So for me, Bridge is just the fastest way to see all your photos at once and quickly compare 2 or 3 together and just reject without losing the files. And I can take something like 500 shots that I've captured for a project and quickly narrow it down to like 30, 40 usable shots. Another feature I like of Bridge is its ability to stack photos. So a lot of times we're shooting things with motion in mind. So we may shoot someone in action and we want all 3 or 4 of those frames, and I can quickly stack those in Bridge so that I know later on I want to animate those together. From Bridge, once I've got all my photos sorted, then I begin editing in RAW, right? So anyone that takes photos knows that RAW is far superior to JPEGs. It gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of changing the exposure, lifting up shadows, and keeping overexposed images and bringing that data back. I don't know whether you consider this Photoshop. It opens in Photoshop, so it's kind of Photoshop, but open it up in Camera Raw and make those baseline edits. I'm not gonna edit that out so you know this is real. But the goal with RAW / Photoshop RAW is to really get everything evened out. Sometimes the sky is overexposed and the subject is underexposed, so I'm doing radial adjustments, gradual adjustments, and just trying to get everything to a good, even, consistent point. If the lighting's changing out through the day, then I'm kind of evening that all out to make these photos really feel cohesive in one sort of color and tone to them. After I've edited everything in RAW, then I will bring it into Photoshop to do retouching. So if there's any strange wrinkles in a shirt, or I don't know, someone's faces needs just like lifted up, smile a little more, or maybe there's a big hair on the product or something like that. That's a lot of those detailed work that I'm doing in Photoshop to kind of refine everything and take all the really detailed elements out of the photos to really make it next level. And if something's maybe I missed the focal on the eye of the subject a little bit, then I'll go in and kind of sharpen that part. And it's really those individual case-by-case retouches that I'm doing in Photoshop. After the Photoshop retouching is complete, then I will save those all as JPEGs from Photoshop and bring them into Lightroom. Now, what I'm doing in Lightroom is kind of the style aspect of this. So I've sorted everything through Bridge. I've got everything evened out in Camera Raw. and then I've retouched everything in Photoshop. Now Lightroom is where I'm gonna do my split toning, really mess with the colors of the photography, bring up the sharpening, fine tune the shadows and the highlights a little more, and give it that personal style based on me editing it or what's called for the project. I've been editing videos since, I don't know, junior high school, and I used to make backyard wrestling videos with my little brothers, complete with like entrance music through a CD player, like queuing up everyone's music, coming out, fake wrestling, and then watching them back on our VHSs, probably recording over, you know, the family's holiday recording or the soap opera my mother was recording at the time. But I've always had an interest in video. I love music videos, are really what got me into wanting to learn post-production and editing. But since then, I've been able to do a lot of e-commerce focused videos and really sell products through video advertising. So on a video project for me, the workflow starts with Premiere Pro. So I'm going to bring in all my footage and use Premiere Pro initially to kind of sort through stuff, usually into like interview, action sequences, and B-roll. And from there, I'll kind of chop up individual sequences and then use those 3 different buckets to create my main edit. Once I've got sort of the pacing of the edit and the music added to it, from there, I'll usually export out a base layer, and that's where Adobe After Effects comes into play. So, I'd say so much. I gotta quit doing that. Anyway, after I've completed the initial timeline and story in Premiere Pro, I'll bring that exported base layer into After Effects, and that's where I'm adding text and motion graphics and lens flares and that kind of stuff to it, messing with any type of effect work that I want to do. Another thing I really use Adobe After Effects for a lot is its content aware filler feature. So when you're running and gunning and trying to maximize the day for a client, there's always a chance that you miss something. And on a recent shoot, we missed an old dirty mask lying in the ground. And with Adobe After Effects, you can easily replace that with content aware fill and kind of save your shot. So again, that's after I've got the story and I know what clips I'm using, you don't need to take that out of every clip you shot. But if you notice on a clip by clip basis, if something needs something removed from the shot, Adobe After Effects is a great tool for that. Once I've completed the post-production and motion graphics in After Effects, I will usually export out those effects with a transparent layer from After Effects and bring them into Premiere Pro. From there, I might do some fine tuning again to the story or cutting up the motion graphics just a little different to pace it out based on the 3rd or 4th time I've watched it. I always recommend using Adobe Media Encoder, whether you're exporting an After Effects file or a Premiere Pro file. By queuing up your exports in Media Encoder, you free up the software you're using. That way, while Media Encoder is exporting out your footage, if you need to do other edits or work on another project, your software isn't tied up exporting that 30-minute long export or whatever it's going to be. The Media Encoder is doing that, so you still retain access to either Premiere Pro or After Effects. That's video. Design, for me as a creative director, is my core competency. It's what I went to school for. It's the first real aspect of creativity that I refined my craft and consider myself to be professional at. Photo and video came later, but design is really where my heart started at. And there's a few different tools, and different than photo and video, it's not exactly direct workflow. I kind of use them all in different ways, and really what they're defined by is the medium you're working in. So this will be a little basic for you, but if you're advanced. If you're new to this, I hope this helps. Photoshop is mostly going to be for photo-based projects, raster-based. So we hit the difference between raster and raster and vector. Raster is pixel-based. Vector is an algorithm-based. Vector can be scaled to infinite and never lose data. Raster, as you scale those pixels, you'll start to see the edges and the blurriness and pixelization that you've probably seen on images before. So Photoshop is going to be used design-wise for anything that has a lot of complicated photography aspects to it. Illustrator for me is those clean, flat shapes. You can add texture, but those clean, flat shapes. If you're doing a logo, if you're working on some sort of graphical element, custom icons, Illustrator is the go-to for that. InDesign for me is a great presentation tool. Any types of pitches I do or project proposals I do within InDesign, but also any publications. So if you're doing a book design, a pamphlet, any type of design document that requires a large amount of text, Adobe InDesign is going to be your go-to because it has the most amount of tool sets to manage typography. And in a lot of cases, I'm creating a logo in Illustrator, I'm doing some type of Photoshop collage, and I'm bringing those all into InDesign to lay out some type of custom design. So design for me really includes those 3 core products. I hope this is helpful for you, whether you're a new designer, a traditional designer looking at different people's workflows, or a client just trying to understand the complexities of what creatives do. Know that it's an ever-changing thing, and you have to constantly evolve your tool set and your skill set and your workflows. But again, why I love Adobe is because it all works so well together. It just plays nicely between the softwares, and it's one subscription. We are the creative director at Destin Whales. Hope you found value in this today. Would love for you to check out my website, destinwhales.com. Subscribe to the channel if you can. I'll be continuing to put out new content that is focused on educating creators and explaining some of the behind-the-scenes process of creating content at scale for direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands. Thanks.